We are in our local channel.
second annual Monterey Abalone Festival. We will work on having the microphone working in just a few moments, but until then I am nice and loud, so it should hopefully be no problem. My name is Tommy Hattori, and I am going to be hosting this event with Tim Thomas. We have a wonderful two-day program here for you to learn all about abalone, the history of abalone, modern-day efforts to help conserve abalone, and some of the amazing things that are being done locally across the state and worldwide. So we're really, really thankful for you all to be here. Thank you for coming out, taking the time to learn a little bit about what's going on. I first of all want to thank the Monterey Bay Lion Dance Team for starting us off with that incredible performance. Want to let you know that the Monterey Bay Lion Dance Team practices here in the JACL Hall. They practice on Fridays from 7 to 9 p.m. and on Sundays from 9 a.m. to 12. They wanted to let you all know that it is open to anyone of any experience level, any ages, any fitness level. So really a very open organization. If that looked like a lot of fun for you and you're interested in learning a little bit more, come on out to one of their practices. Once again, that's Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. or Sunday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Just a couple logistical things before we get hopped into our program. The first thing is I would like to thank my parents back in the back of the room, Ellie and Ring Hattori. They have put together an incredible refreshment station that is free. So please go on back, grab a snack. There's some hot tea as well. And it's going to be open all throughout the 2 days. Tomorrow we'll have a little bit more finger food for you as well, because we'll be closer to lunchtime. But at any time, please feel free to get up and go and get a refreshment if you would like to get a refreshment. We're also hoping to have a little bit of break in between the different talks, so that you can look around the JACL Hall, which is itself an amazing historic monument that we have here in Monterey. We also have a museum downstairs that Tim Thomas has done an incredible job putting together. Please take some time to get down. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Really, really wonderful. It's worth your time to go down there. There are stairs down this way, but I do recommend going around. It's a little bit safer to go around. So if you just go out and around, you'll see there's a nice entrance to it. Amazing information about the history of the Japanese Americans here on the Monterey Peninsula. Also wanted to let you know that we have a couple informational booths outside. There is a general informational booth with programs and some merchandise that was made up by my wife. She did all the art for the festival this year, so please stop by and see her. My daughter also put together an informational pamphlet about the white abalone, which I will be talking quite a bit about tomorrow during my talk, tomorrow, 10 a.m. here in the JACL Hall, small plug. And then also there is a booth from the White Abalone Project, the captive breeding program out of UC Davis Bodega Bay, who made the journey down here and set up a table as well. They have some white abalone shells you can actually see and I believe touch, some models of abalone, so really amazing information about the work they're doing and abalone in general. And they are also set up outside. So we have an amazing lineup of different speakers ahead of you today. And again, our hope is that you're able to learn a lot, to be together in community, to learn a little bit about abalone, about the history of Monterey, and some of the amazing work that's going on here. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to have you here. Our first speaker is going to be a little bit of a schedule change. Sandy Leiden, unfortunately, was not able to be with us today. He did have a conflict, but luckily enough, we have an amazing historian here in house, and so we have asked Tim Thomas to step on in and share with us a little bit. So, Tim is a fourth-generation native of the Monterey area and is the co-chairperson of the JACL Heritage Foundation and a JACL board member, in addition to co-hosting the Monterey Abalone Festival. Tim has served as a researcher and lecturer on the history of Monterey's fishing communities as a former curator of the Monterey Maritime History Museum. Tim is the author of Japanese on the Monterey Peninsula and the Abalone King of Monterey, Pop Ernst Dodler. He is a historical consultant for the Monterey Bay Aquarium and involved in program development for Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and California State Parks. Please join me in welcoming Tim Thomas to the stage.
Thank you, Tommy. I know I'm not Sandy Leiden. I know. Hope you're not disappointed. I've known Sandy for many, many years, and so actually, kind of way I'm in this building today because of Sandy. We go back about 30 years, the two of us. He's taken me to Japan a few times, and we all kind of work the same side of the street. So, before we start, I want to ask you a question. Anybody here today who's not ever been in this building before? Yeah, a few people. So this building, as Tommy pointed out, is the JACL. This building, believe it or not, on May 2nd this year, turned 100 years old. This building was built, this neighborhood we're now standing in was once a thriving Japan town. And this building was built by the Japanese Association, which was a group of Japanese businessmen, all associated with the fishing industry here in Monterey, and mostly the abalone industry. It was fishing that brought the Japanese to Monterey, and it was abalone in particular brought the Japanese to Monterey. Abalone money literally built this building, and built the Monterey Wharf, and built most of the neighborhoods you see here. Abalone is very, very important, and I've been researching the history of the fisheries in Monterey for well over 40 years. In the last 20 years or so, it's focused primarily on this Japanese story, and in particular, the abalone story. And how important abalone is. It is my opinion, this is something that came to this year. I've been working this a long time. I'm chasing the story to here, to Japan. It is my opinion, and I'll debate anybody in this room, that the abalone fishery is the most important fishery in the history of California. It wasn't economically, but it was culturally and historically. And Monterey in particular, Monterey was the center of the universe for abalone. I hope you will all join us this afternoon when the blind dance marches all down to Del Monte Beach, where Linda Yamane and the Rumen tribal community will be putting on the abalone dance on the beach there. That's how far back it goes, abalone in Monterey. I mean, the word abalone comes from the Monte people, the native people of Monterey. Right? They had a word for the red abalone, which is this guy. This is a red abalone, which is the largest of the abalones, the predominant abalone in Monterey Bay. That word was Ohlone. Ohlone in linguists trace the word abalone back to this word Ohlone that starts right here in Monterey. Rumpson were the first abalone divers in Monterey Bay. And we know that from burials come around in recent years. You cannot build a house on the Monterey waterfront or running across a Rumpson burial or two. The males have what's known as surfer's ear, which little bunny grows over the year, but spend a lot of time in the cold water in Monterey Bay, which makes a lot of sense, don't you think? You see an abalone the size of a hubcap, you're going to dive down there and get it. And as I mentioned, abalone is a very important part of their life. They ate it, they used the shells to decorate baskets, to make tools like shovels and bowls and fish hooks, and they traded other Californians to things they could not get here in Monterey, like obsidian, which is a volcanic rock, was used in airplanes and spear points. And perhaps some of you, you're really young, but perhaps some of you remember that old Kevin Costner movie called Dancing with Wolves. Ever remember that movie? Yeah. That is about Indians in South Dakota. If you watch that film closely, and it comes on cable TV all the time, if you watch that film closely, you notice there's a lot of abalone in the clothing, in the regalia that they're wearing. Red abalone in particular. As far as I know, there is no red abalone in South Dakota. It's got to get there some way. It's one of those trade routes. A lot, and most of it starts right here in Monterey. Monterey is literally the abalone capital of the world. And to give you that connection to abalone here, I mentioned that wasn't built this building. But what really started the building of this building is this little bento box I hold in my hand here. In 1926, in November 1926, or 1925, I'm sorry, November 1925, the Royal Prince and Princess Osaka were returning to Japan after spending a few years in Europe, going to university. They came to Monterey, and they had a huge picnic with them out at Point Lobos, where they were Monterey, Hollister, Watsonville, Salinas, Japanese Creek, all that. And a local Japanese artist here in Monterey made bento boxes for the royal couple. This is just one part of it that we have. This is a Monterey pine with abalone inlay inside it. So again, that's how important. We had an abalone diving demonstration for them. We actually recreated that picnic last November out at Point Lobo. Also, I brought with me abalone mallet. This came out of the Roy Hattori, the Hattori family, who back there, this came out of there. Roy's mother's cannery up was on the Monterey Wharf, pounding abalone. She got a special contract from Popper and Stiltzer's, the Abalone King's restaurant, to make these big steaks, he told me. Also, if you look around the hall today, you'll see all these abalone shells all around. They have all the different tables. These shells are old. These all came out of Monterey Bay in the 1930s by Japanese divers. And at that time, it was illegal to ship abalone shells out of the state of California. So they were just dumped over the wharf, they were chucked at the seaside or Sand City, or they, Popper, Stolper, the Abalone King, who I'm going to talk about today, actually would give them away. Anybody's taking tours of old Monterey neighborhoods, oftentimes you see in the neighborhoods, their gardens are lined with abalone shells. That's where they got them, from Popper and Stolper. And all died by abalone divers in Monterey Bay. One last thing, before I get to it, is I guess I'm a little ambitious this year. So one thing I wanted to do is to create this art project for the Abalone Festival. And we were asking artists to paint their own abalone. We'll provide the surface to paint on. And by the way, I should point out that this was cut out by Rick Hattori and Rick McCone's back there. And Rick Hattori is the son of Roy Hattori, the last of the Japanese abalone divers. So that itself makes it this story. So we extended this because we only got a few people to pick it up, and that was our problem because I didn't get enough time to get the information out there. But we'll give you to the middle of September, pick one up, and then we're going to hang all of them up here in the hall. So please, if you want one, you can talk to me or talk to someone up there in the front, and we'll make sure you get one to take home and paint it. If you know some friends, home artists, please take one and paint it. All right? So here it is. So this is where it all starts. That's Popper and Stolter, the Abalone King. Pop Stolter was a German restaurateur. I wrote a book about Popper, and it's called The Abalone King. He came to Monterey with a very large family in 1907 and opened a little restaurant about 2 blocks from here up on Alvarado Street called the Cafe Ernest. And it was sort of European-style, Bohemian-style restaurant. And believe it or not, in those days, people in Monterey really did not eat a lot of fresh seafood. You'd think they would, but they did love to eat oysters. Oysters are very popular, not just here, but everywhere. But here's the thing, you don't get a lot of oysters in Monterey Bay. You had to come from San Francisco, where they raise oysters in oyster farms in the open estuary, so they come by train. If you know anything about trains in the early part of the 20th century, trains had a tendency to break down. There'll be a cow on the track, something to slow that train down. And oftentimes, Papa would go to his train station just a couple blocks from here to take those ordered oysters, and they would be spoiled. Like any kind of seafood, especially shellfish, they don't stay fresh very long. This is inside the Top Restaurant in 1907. You see right there. If you know Monterey Abalone Street, there's an ice cream store there now. That's what the restaurant was. And it's a new building, not the same building. Besides the restaurant, he also is a caterer. This is a picnic. He catered at Point Lobos. You can see Pop. Whoop, wrong one. That's it. Well, it's not working. Pop was standing there. You can see him in the picture there. These are a bunch of Bohemians there. You'll probably see in this picture all kinds of those Bohemian guys, and George Sterling, and all the big buddies. They all had kind of half the Carmel, and he was holding Abalone picnics that he would cater off. This is where it starts. This is what's called the Japanese Association. These are the guys that built that hall. And I should mention, I didn't mention this, but the royal prince and princess were so taken by that picnic that they have here that they left $100 to build this building, which started the whole raising the money. This picture, by the way, was taken on the corner where the Captain Stoker coffee shop is. But it all starts with this guy right here. This guy is Otto Subin Miller. Miller came to Monterey in 1895. He was a labor contractor. And he got a job working for the land arm of the Southern Pacific Railroad for the Pacific Improvement Company. They had owned, at that time, about 8,000 acres of the Monte Peninsula, because they, believe it or not, had this quirky idea they could turn Monterey into a tourist paradise. Who thinks such a thing? So he's bringing in Japanese workers to clear land. He's providing these workers food and water and wood for their fires. And he was collecting wood one day near the Monterey Wharf, went down to the harbor, and he sees all this abalone down there. In fact, so much abalone, he actually described it in a letter as being a carpet of abalone. And nobody doing with it. And the reason nobody in Monterey is doing with it is because nobody knew what the heck you're supposed to do with it. Now, unless you're cutting abalone properly, it's kind of like eating a rubber boot. The Japanese, who was even out for centuries, they know what to do with it. So Noda writes his letter back to the government of Japan and said, hey, all this abalone here, nobody wants it. The government of Japan says this guy right here, this is Jinosuke Kodani, whose family's in the abalone business in the Chiba Prefecture of Japan. Those paintings you see that are on my left here on the wall are all contemporary paintings of the Chiba Prefecture, Minamboso, where all these divers came from. His family, Kodani's family, was in the abalone business. In fact, they were famous for their salted dried abalone. If you come over, oh, this is great. You know, a lot of abalone. These abalone are big. He sent back to Japan for abalone divers known as ama, or free divers. In between this time, our friend Mr. Noda goes down to what is now Cannery Row and leases a piece of property down there. Anybody know the Monterey or Cannery Row? There's a big empty lot down there now next to the El Torito restaurant. Someday they're going to put some kind of marketplace thing there. Or so they keep telling me. He leased that very piece of property and sent back to Japan. But other Japanese fishermen created a little Japanese fishing colony on that site. These ama showed, 3 of them are actually arrived here in late December 1898. I know who they are. I've actually seen their passports. They're picked up at the train stations near Monterey, taken down to Noda's campsite, got dressed that next morning in traditional ama gear, which you can see just consists of a little thin white cotton outfit here. Here's the abalone basket, abalone pride, a pair of goggles, which had pig vials on the end that they would squeeze to help release the pressure. We jumped in the water, and about 10 seconds later, I jumped back out, and they said, it's dinosaur. You didn't tell us how cold that was. They're actually the 15-degree water temperature difference in Monterey in Japan. That is a huge difference. Now, we make light of it. The truth is, they're diving like this in Monterey Bay into the 1920s. These guys are good at it. It was tradition. And how they would work as a pair on the boat. And usually there was a barrel in the middle of the boat which had a fire going constantly, and they trade off going into the water. So one diver went into the water, tied a rope around his waist, it went through a pulley system. They'd go that far the anchor line, going down to the Monterey Bay, going 30, 40, 50 feet into the bay. Keep in mind, they're holding their breath the whole time. Some of these guys can hold their breath up to 8 minutes, right? And ready to come to the surface, his partner, under the bubble, take under that rope, which had a big wave attached to it, use a big rock, and toss himself over and yank it back up to the surface. It was straight off, back and forth, collecting abalone, which is pretty good, but it wasn't that efficient. By the way, there's a pair of the goggles that they were wearing, you see right there. And this is Mr. Kodani at Point Lobos, you see in a big pile of abalone shells right there. So around the 20th century, Kodani, who by the way, if you know that story, Kodani made his way around the peninsula in Nevada, Point Lobos. If you like Point Lobos, number one, it looked like home. That was really important. But also it was secluded, and he liked that part of it as well. He leased a part of Point Lobos, and I'm sure you all know that story, but he leased part of it to a guy named A.M. Allen. A.M. Allen was the owner of that property. A.M. Allen was a mining engineer. There was an old coal mine out there at one time. And he also was a racetrack designer. And Allen watched him work for about a year and said, these guys are really good. And so there's money made, and so he became Kodani's partner. So during the 20th century, they sent for helmet divers. You can see the helmet divers in the water here. They took these boats. These are actually converted whaling boats. There was a large whaling industry in Monterey, Portuguese whalers at one time, not just in Monterey, but Point Lobos as well. This is the hand pump you see here for pumping air to the diver here. This, by the way, is a Portuguese whaler who went to work for Kodani and Allen here, the only non-Japanese guy. Actually, and Kodani is here. Oh no, see, A.M. Allen is right here. And Kodani is also in this picture as well. But what I really love about this picture, and all that diving gear, by the way, came from Japan. They did not like the American gear. They thought it was just too rough. So they got it from Japan. And I can look at the gear, and I can tell it's all brand new because there's no dent on those helmets. All brand new gear right there. This is actually a setup photograph. It's in the color that Point Lobos you see right there. And so early days, for these helmet divers, that water was too cold. And so initially all they would be knitters. And take wool sponge, tear apart, and knit this wool underwear upon a pair of that, sometimes 2 pairs of that, put on their clothes, put on a big heavy canvas suit, attach about 65 pounds of lead weight to the front and back, tie the lead to their shoes, a bolt on the helmet, which weighs about 35 pounds, which has a hose attached to it, go down into the Monterey Bay. As you see, in the early days, they would hand pump the air down to the diver. He's going 40, 50 feet into the bay. The deeper he went, the harder it was to pump. Then in the 1920s, they put air compressor in the boat, so now they're pushing the air to the diver with a motor. Now that was going 40, 50, 60, 80, even up to 100 feet into the Monterey Bay. But at that level, you can't see anything, so you're on your hands and knees trying to find the abalone, and you can't see them very long at that level. Everybody here is a diver, but you know at that level, you get what they call the bend, so they have to work their way up very slowly to a 30-foot level and be down all day collecting abalone. This is, by the turn of the 20th century, what the Japanese do with all the abalone, of course, is they were drying it. There was no Western market for it here. They were drying it, and they were shipping it back to Japan. Dried abalone in Japan is a very important thing, not just as a food commodity, but culturally it's very important. Oftentimes, at holiday times, particularly at New Year's, you'll get a card of dried stripped abalone inside that card. I learned recently that as total lost art, there's only very few places in Japan that still do that. They take that abalone, they strip it, really paper thin, they pound it to these long strips like this to make that abalone. I got some from Japan. It was very expensive to do that kind of thing today. So they began to can abalone, number one, to try to create a Western market for it. And so, but even then it was still, no pun intended, a tough sell. And they were shipping the canned part to Japan, but they didn't want the canned part in Japan. They wanted that dry product in Japan. That's inside the cannery at Point Lobos, and they're canning it and sending it out. Of course, label. They also had a Japanese version of this label that was going to Japan. They actually worked with a chef, not Pop Ernest, but they worked with a chef at the Hotel Monte and created recipes for abalone. abalone salads and abalone stews and that kind of thing. Now here's Pop Ernest's restaurant. So Pop, as I mentioned, this thing with the oysters, he's always looked something new to serve in his restaurant. He's watching his abalone, reading Monterey. He says, oh yeah, abalone, kind of like giant oysters. But brings to his restaurant one day in 1908, experiments with it, find a couple of famous recipe, and you slice the foot. Because that's you're eating, at least Western style, that's you're eating is the foot. All abalone is, right, is a big marine snail. And then you pound it, and you don't just pound it. You know, there's a certain technique to doing that. And then you wrap egg wash and cracker crumbs to cook in olive oil and butter. And soon people came from all the best steaks in Pop's restaurant and sing songs, white poets. Some folks vote to quit on toast because they think it's Tony. But I'm content to own my rent and live on abalone. George Sterling looked at his guest books in 1913. So here is Pop here, and all the people working in the restaurant are his big family. His daughter, one of his sons, you see right here. They all worked in the restaurant at one time or another. In 1908, he took over the building next door to him, primarily because Teddy Roosevelt was sending his great white fleet around the Pacific, venture across to Tokyo Bay, and he opened a tavern. Pop beer was very important to Pop in his business. This is like someone gave me this, but this is a token they used to give at his restaurant, at his tavern, to get 5 cents worth of beer, which is actually probably good if you love a beer fan. So here's from Pop's guest book, and I'm not stepping on Jeffrey's toes, I hope, from the abalone song, and there's the stanza, that's the famous stanza. So George Sterling wrote in his guest books, but we don't think George Sterling wrote this. I think it was written by one named Opal Heron, who was a good friend of Sterling. She was an actress, a bohemian. She and her husband owned the Forest Theater at that time. But this was written in his restaurant in 1913. 1913 is a very important year. In 1913, the state of California made it illegal for the Japanese to ship dried abalone out of the state of California. And they could ship the canned product, they couldn't ship the dried product. And they did that because they were trying to control fishery that California was at that time. But I said they didn't want that canned product in Japan, they wanted that dried product. What are they going to do? 1913, Pop Ernest gets offered a job at a restaurant in San Francisco called the Hop Row. They were so taken by that recipe, they said, you have to close up the restaurant in Monterey, take it up to that sophisticated audience in San Francisco. They're offering so much money, he had no option to close the restaurant in Monterey and move to San Francisco to the Hop Row restaurant, which was in this building, Pacific Building, which is still there in San Francisco today. And into the restaurant then called the Hop Row. If you've ever been to the Civic Building today, downstairs in their big basement is a giant food court down there, and that's actually the Hop Row restaurant was in that big food court that's there today. This is the menu for the Hop Row from about 1913, 1914, and you can see glued on the bottom are abalone specials here. This is the very first time abalone ever appeared in a paper printed envelope. So Pop didn't have a printed envelope, or a printed menu in his restaurant in Monterey. So here's a blow-up of that glory. You can see the abalone cocktail, these are scents, abalone salad, soups, abalone nectar, which is just the juice that came out of the shell, that's all I went. And abalone chowder, all right there. But still, abalone was a tough sell. This is inside the Hop Row restaurant in about 1913. You see right there? And so this ad appears in Sex Chronicle every single week. The cleanest, wholesome shellfish is the abalone. It clings to the rocks and weeds on seaweed and feeds on seaweed and mosses. We get the Daily Express direct from Point Lobos, Carmel Bay, captured seaweed that arrive here not only fresh, but alive and kicking. Sometimes. So they had the same problem with the oysters, and they had a problem with the trains coming to San Francisco. In 1915, the World's Fair comes to San Francisco called the Panama City National Exposition. The big World's Fair, they opened to honor the opening of the Panama Canal. It had opened a couple of years before. And you've all been to San Francisco, right? That Palace of Fine Arts was built for that World's Fair. But it was just a big mud flat. All that was filled in, like 600 acres for this World's Fair. It was only there for 1 year. Every state was represented. California, the largest state building that was 5 acres in size. Inside that our California building, every county represented, and Monterey County, the largest of those buildings. Let's go to the fair. Here's our ticket. Let's visit the Monterey County exhibit. And there it is, Monterey County. What do you see in the exhibit? Abalone diver in a cave. Abalone can, look at all abalone in the cases you see right here. Here's the backside of that. There's our diver, canned abalone, all different kinds of abalone here. Anybody here remember the old Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History? When you go in there and they have that ocean exhibit inside? That's it. It was named for that World's Fair. And when they transferred back to Monterey, they put the PG Museum. You see right there. And the Point Lobos Canning Company was giving away canned abalone to all its guests who were at the fair, and sending folks down to the Hofbrau for full abalone dinner. And soon the whole world on this product, hotels, restaurants, all on this new sensation, abalone. Pop says there's money to be made here. He quits his job at the Hofbrau, moves up a couple of blocks to Kearney Street and opens a restaurant. It's a businessman's restaurant, and it's a place to eat morning, noon, and night. Specialist on seafood, game, and poultry. Big, deep sea mussel was not known before in San Francisco. Exclusive. I love that fact it's in red. Abalone a la Ernest. Very solid and liquid forms. So, as you know, he was treating it like Venus Central, right? That's how he was preparing it. This was only offered for about a year. This was about 1918, 1917, and of course the war was going on in Europe. The United States wasn't in it yet, but there was a lot of anti-German sentiment in the United States at that time. And so he closed his restaurant in San Francisco. He was back to Monterey. He lived out of Point Lobos for about a year. Worked with Allen and Kodani. And anybody knows Point Lobos, where the waiter's cabinet is? Inside that waiter's cabinet, he had a little sort of assembly line of people pounding abalone and preparing to sell the restaurants, hotels, all down Northern California. In fact, Pop's wife stayed in San Francisco as a broker, brokering abalone to folks up and down Northern California. In 1919, he goes down to the wharf, opens the very first restaurant on Monterey Wharf. Here it is right here. You can see Pop right here. And that's one of his sons right there. They actually put the restaurant in what was then originally built as the Monterey Yacht Club. It opened in 1911. So originally, he called the restaurant the Club, because that was already written on the roof of the building. So one changed the name, but he quickly became known as Pop Ernest. There's a card from the original restaurant you see right there. And then he changed the name to Pop Ernest Restaurant. He actually had his own boat, and he was also, he had his own abalone divers who were gathering abalone for him for his restaurant. Actually, a diver named Eddie Bushnell, he wasn't Japanese, who was one of the divers for Pop, and diving abalone for him. This is Eddie Bushnell here, who was one of the divers for Pop. Eddie actually the only, well actually there was another guy, I was one of the only Caucasian guys. I recently learned there was another guy who came to Monterey, it was a young man in about 1935. He was part of the CCC during the Depression. And he didn't like being in the CCC, so he came to Monterey, and he got a job working on a Japanese dive boat as an abalone diver. He only did it for 1 year. I have no photographs of it, unfortunately, but we know he was doing it. I met his son. I got that from his son. So Pop continued to broker abalone, not just in Monterey, but all over the West Coast. This is one of the cards here. It's abalone specialty by Pop Ernest, the noted expert, it says right there. And then, of course, this is the very first menu that Pop had in his restaurant. This is the menu that he first put in. It's, of course, some of you probably recognize the artwork here. Anybody recognize that? That's Joe Mora. He did this artwork for free abalone dinners. But this was printed on heavy cardstock. And so the idea of the menu was a menu. But people liked the artwork so much they were taking the menus home. So it constantly had to print new menus. So eventually he got wise about it and began to print them on a soft or a thinner paper stock and use them as a giveaway. And so there's the giveaway that he was giving away here. This is a very famous menu. So we know this is Joe Mora. Anybody recognize this art here? This is another very famous international artist, Armin Hansen. Again, he also did it for free abalone dinners in Pop's restaurant. And you can still find these menus because people kept them. You can go on eBay, you can find one for about $100 if you're lucky. So again, artists are coming constantly to Pop's restaurant. This is also his guest book here, and you can see, wrong way, Arvin Hansen here, and Myron Oliver, and August Gay, all sorts of famous artists. Pop loved the artists and come to his restaurant all the time. They didn't have any money. He would give them lunch or dinner. Oftentimes they'd give them paintings. They would hang in his restaurant. He was very kind to the artists in Monterey. Here he is on the on patio of his restaurant here. This is about 1925, and these two ladies, she was famous for his abalone stew, which he'd serve in the shell. He'd be eating a stew out of the shell, and he'd fill the holes of that shell with lead. Just a little lead, not very much. Here he is sitting down, you can really see the shells. I actually have one of the shells from his restaurant down at the museum. You can see one down there. You can see the lead in there when they do that. And so he would give away the shells, as I mentioned, might be. This is him there on the wharf, giving away those abalone shells. Also, you might notice the fez. He always wore this fez. Nobody knows why. Not even his family. And I worked with his family. I worked with this for a long, long time. You know, I believe it's something he got at that World's Fair in 1915. And I also believe it was a marketing tool. It was a master marketing thing. And people remembered him because of that fez. And more importantly, people remembered his restaurant. And that's why he wore that thing you see right there. I believe that. So this is inside his restaurant about 1930. You can see how it was sort of nautical theme, whale bones here, abalone shells hanging here, table, and a lighthouse, and the lamps are all made out of shells and different kinds of things. And then this is my old friend Roy Torrey. This is Tommy's grandfather, and Roy was very important to me. And I met Roy way back in the 1990s when I first began this journey of the abalone story, and Roy was the last of the Japanese divers. But more importantly, and I know Tommy will talk about this tomorrow, but more importantly, Roy was the only diver that was born here in Monterey. He was Nisei, second generation, only one. All of the others came to Japan, but a couple of such returned to Japan. But Roy was born in Monterey in 1919. And by the way, the wool underwear, you notice, there was a dye company in Tokyo that began to produce this wool underwear, particularly for the divers here in Monterey and California. The company still exists actually in Japan. I don't know if they're still making that stuff, but they're still there in Tokyo. And then here's Roy getting ready to go into the water. By the way, look at his helmet. All those dents on that helmet. Right? He told me he'd get down in the currents and gosh, kick him up against the rocks, rock kick up hitting the helmet, all kinds of problems down there. And then I love this photograph of the dive boat. So they were going out 3 days at a time. So here's the thing. Because of Pop's recipe he invented in his restaurant in 1908, he literally saved the Japanese abalone industry, in not just Monterey, but in California. And because of the recipe he invented in 1908, by 1920, there were 9 full-time Japanese companies operating off the Monterey Wharf. In 1929, the California abalone industry being close to $1 million in revenue. $1 million. 75% of that was cut out of Monterey Bay by Japanese divers. And prior to World War II, the majority of the business on the Monterey Wharf were Japanese-owned. Fish markets, abalone processors, all because of the recipe that German guy invented in 1908. And that's one of the reasons I believe that abalone fishery is the most important fishery in the history of California. So I love this photograph. We go up for 3 days at a time. Abalone season, by the way, can last up to 9 months. It would fluctuate from year to year. So you go for 3 days at a time. This is just the dive boat, but there was a bigger boat they called the mother boat that would pull the dive boat. And that's when they keep the abalone on the mother boat, and then of course you spend the night and sleep on the mother boat and that kind of thing. But I love this photograph here because you can see this is Roy's brother, his cousin, a good friend here, and you can see the lifeline here for the diver. That's Roy's is the guy in the water here. Here's the hose here, and I also learned something recently from from Rick told me his dad used to love to sing while he was diving in the water, which I just think is the greatest thing in the whole world. But anyway, so you can see the boat here, and what I love about this, he's going 30, 40 feet into the bay, and they'll be down there all day. They'll go down at 9 o'clock in the morning and dive till 12, come up for lunch, and go down at 1 o'clock and come back up at 4. Oftentimes they're moving from place to place, they'll just pull the diver up about 10 feet off the seafloor and move them underwater as they're moving to the next place. And there's a guy abalone. And you can see this. The guy on the sculling oar in the back here, this is Japanese technology, of course, and you see also on Chinese boats. The scull oar is only found on the west coast here in California, in Monterey. The Japanese brought this technology with them. The skull, of course, you didn't need to use a motor, so you got to use that skull, and it attract the diver by the bubbles that are coming up under the water here. And I had the opportunity in Japan to do that, to work on the skull. It's really hard to do, but once you learn it, it's a really cool thing. And you can see that this is a little engine cover over the air compressor and the engine of the boat here. And I love this. Here's a tea kettle here and a pair of shoes. So I asked Roy, why are the shoes there? He said that water is so cold. He cut the water, he's just freezing for like 20 minutes, he's shaking. And so he had those hot shoes to put on his feet to help warm it up and come out of the water. So they bring the abalone in. This is the mother boat you see here, and you can see all the abalone. These are called live boxes. Again, this is technology that came from Japan, and that's how they kept the abalone fresh. They put it in those live boxes. They kept the out boxes in the water. The abalone would be packed on top of each other and those boxes. By the way, these boxes are made out of redwood, and they're made by Monterey Boatworks. The Sino family made those boxes for Monterey JACL Hall. And then this is again another boat we call an abalone here. Each boat would come in with 200 dozen large red abalone. You go into the canneries in Monterey, so the Monterey Wharf. There were 3 abalone canneries. One of them was the Torrey family had one, and this is a large co-op. And Larry Oda, who's on our board of directors here. In fact, today, Larry's last day of being the national president of JACL, his father manages this particular cannery, you see right here. And all Japanese workers in these canneries, for the most part. And these are ladies pulling the abalone out of the shell, and then they're cleaning them, washing them there, and then slicing those abalone steak, and then pounding them to make them nice and soft. Thank you, Popolis. And then being sold to Pop's restaurant. That's one of the places like this. This is my favorite picture of Pop's restaurant. I love the big octopus painted on here on the side here. I wish I had this sign right here. What a wonderful sign that is. And you see like Pop died in 1934. His sons continued to run this restaurant until 1952. During the Depression, it went through a hard time, and everybody else did. In fact, they would close it during the fall, winter months, and just open up for the spring and summer, early fall months. And then they sold it in 1952 to the Cerrito family. You remember Cerrito's restaurant on the wharf? That's Cerrito's restaurant. They bought it from Pop Burns. In fact, when the Cerritos bought it, Pop's oldest son, Carl Zolter, actually was a waiter for Pop for many, many years, and then he continued being a waiter when it was Cerritos, and they bought him on because he represented that Pop Burns thing. That's why they bought him to do that. The building itself actually had a very complicated building. The actual building belonged to the city of Monterey because it was the Ohlone Yacht Club. The property it sat on belonged to the state of California. And so in the early 1970s, the state of California, state parks wanted to tear it down. It was in pretty bad condition. And they wanted to make some kind of John Jay Sloat monument there, which they never did, by the way. But they went back and forth when the building burned down in the early 1970s. Actually, the fire department turned it over arson that burned it down. But we don't know what happened to it. And there's actually nothing left of it that's down there. This is the waiters in the restaurant, and Carl Zolter and the other waiters that worked in the restaurant. There's your abalone steak dinner in Pop's restaurant, you see right here. This picture taken, this cost around $1.25. Today, that restaurant, a day like that, would cost you a couple $100. In fact, I can tell you, in the 1980s, you could go down to the Monterey Wharf and buy a full abalone dinner for under $10. Today, the same meal is going to cost you about $100. So there's no commercial out at the street today in California. Shut down in 1997. And there's no sport fish for abalone anymore either. So abalone is raised by abalone farms, There's 2 in California, is that right, Art, 2? And tomorrow, Art T owns one of them, and tomorrow, he's giving tours of the Abalone Farm on Monterey Wharf, so that'll be a lot of fun to do that. So, I think I've warned you guys enough, so thank you very much, and we're going to give it a minute.
So thank you, Tim, for that incredible information about the abalone. Just wanted to let you know kind of the schedule of events for the rest of the day. We are going to have a little bit of a break now, about 15 minutes. We really encourage you to go down to the museum. A lot of the artifacts that Tim showed in that presentation are down there. We also have refreshments again at the back of the hall and some informational booths for different organizations. The White Abalone Project and the Giant Kelp Restoration Project are both have tables outside for you to learn a little bit more. At 2 o'clock, we will be meeting back in here for a talk by Jeffrey Dunn about the abalone song. After that, at 3 o'clock, we will have the Monterey Bay Lion Dancers bringing us down to Del Monte Beach to see a Rumsen Ohlone tribal community dance led by Linda Yamane. And then tomorrow, we have an exciting group of talks, well, depending on how you feel about it, starting off with me at 10 a.m., talking about my family and our involvement with white abalone. Tim referenced a large amount of it already, but we have some exciting information to share along those lines. Keith from the Giant Kelp Restoration Project will be speaking at 10:45. Joe Ogilvie, an author, will be presenting on his book, Tin Can Coast. The White Abalone Project will be giving a presentation at noon, and then at 12:45 we will be doing a presentation of the 2nd annual Roy Hattori Memorial Award. And then after that we will be taking some tours of the Monterey Abalone Farm. So really a lot in schedule ahead of us over the next couple days. Really want to encourage you to take advantage of all that we have in front of us. And it looks like Tim would like to say something as well.
Just one last thing, I didn't do it earlier, I meant to mention this before, but again, that connection to Monterey and Abalone is the Monterey jacket you see behind us. So this is a tradition in the Chiba prefecture of Japan where all these items come from. It's a fishing community still today. That goes back hundreds of years. And when it is in a good fishing season, the company owner will give to his fishermen this piece of paper fabric to represent their particular fishermen. And the fishermen turn to have these jackets made, which they wore for special events. And I work with a museum in there in Takayama, Japan, that has hundreds of them in their collection. If you look at this one, American flag, Japanese flag, Ide, who's a partner of Noda, Ide and Company, Monterey, USA. That was from here, right? We had no idea it existed until 30 years ago. None. This is something that got in Japan, not here in Monterey. And what we know about these jackets is that they were made in 1900. Less than 10 of them were ever made, and there are only 2 that exist today. One in the museum in Japan, Takayama, Japan, and one that I have downstairs in a little museum downstairs. This one is a reproduction that we work with a last of the traditional Monterey makers in the same town in Japan. The family made this. It took about 2 years to make. Thank you.
Wow.
All right, thank you all for joining us again. We are very excited for our second presenter, who is Jeffrey Dunn, who is an author, filmmaker, historian, and award-winning investigative reporter with 53 years of experience in journalism. He is the senior correspondent for Metro newspapers in California and a regular contributor to the San Francisco Chronicle and Huffington Post. He is the author of numerous books, including Santa Cruz is in the Heart, Volumes 1 and 2, and Chinatown Dreams, The Life and Photographs of George Lee. His films include $1 a Day, 10 Cents a Dance, Chinese Gold, Miss or Myth, Calypso Dreams, and The Glamour Boys Again. He is the recipient of a Gail Rich Award and Distinguished Historian Award from the History Forum, and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Chamber of Commerce. Jeffrey was named Santa Cruz County's Artist of the Year in 2015. Please join me in welcoming Jeffrey Dunn.
Okay. Thank you all for being here, and I especially want to thank Tim. Is he here? I don't see him. For all he's done to make this happen, but really all he's done to encourage me to participate in historical activities in Monterey County. I'm 4th, 5th generation Santa Cruzan, other side of the bay. There were tensions between those two sides of the bay back in the 30s and 40s. But I always had links to Monterey. And my great uncle, Monk Lawuro, was the manager of Fisherman's Wharf No. 2 here in Monterey. And very close with the Japanese American fishing community. And after I gave a talk many years ago, one of the members of the Japanese community came up to me and said, "Your Uncle Monk played a very important role in protecting our fishing boats during World War II, many of which were confiscated, of course." What's ironic about that is my great uncle's mother, my great grandmother, Celestina Lawuro, was one of the Italians who had been relocated in Santa Cruz. So whenever I'm down here, the JACL Hall is kind of my home away from home here. Love it here, and I'm honored to be here today. I call this the Abalone Song 2.0. Okay? There's a reason for that. All of you should have a copy of the words to the Abalone song. If you don't, there's some extras here. And if you pass the extras back, that would be great too. We're gonna experience the spirit of this song, which is a collective spirit and collective engagement of this culture. This was a project I originally worked on for the Monterey Maritime Museum. And Tim was the one who introduced me to this story. Now, I knew this song before, but I didn't know some of the background. So, Tim said he was going to be stepping on my toes a little bit. No, these are perfect segues. There he is. I want us now to, I'll just kind of introduce this, and you're going to have to participate. That's why it's 10.0. It's interactive. What happens is this song won't die. Okay? It's included in London's Valley of the Moon. It kept being included in all these different books and memorials. The 1939 World's Fair in San Francisco, it was featured, and it was claimed as a San Francisco song and not a Carmel song, interestingly enough. And let me tell you where this came from. Carl Sandburg, the poet, interviewed Sterling about this song. And he included in it a book entitled The American Songbook, which gathered songs from around the country that were sort of cultural songs that had sprung up from the earth or from the oceans or rivers of the United States. And it was featured in Sandburg's book. I've pounded a lot of abalone in my life. I was a fish cutter on the Santa Cruz Wharf, and even at the end, when you could still go out, they always would bring the abalone to me to pound, to clean, and to get as much of it as you could out of it. So, by all accounts, whenever there would be a group of people pounding the abalone in Carmel, these songs would be sung. So, please come on. I want you all to participate. Tim, you too.
Yeah, I don't have a...
All right. Okay, I'm going to start it, but I need to hear you, please. We'll start at the top. Oh, some folks boast of quail and toast because they think it's Tony. But I'm content to owe my rent and live on abalone. Oh, Mission Point's a friendly joint where every crab's a crony. and true and kind you'll ever find the clinging abalone. The wonders free beside the sea, wherever the coast is stony. He flaps his wings and madly sings the plaintive abalone. By Carmel Bay, the people say, we feed the Lazzaroni on Boston beans and fresh sardines and toothsome abalone. Some live on hope and some live on dope and some on alimony. But my tomcat, he lives on fat and tender abalone. Oh, some drink rain and some champagne or brandy by the pony. But I will try a little rye with a dash of abalone. Oh, some like jam and some like ham and some like macaroni. But bring to me a pail of gin and a tub of abalone. He hides in caves beneath the waves, his ancient patrimony. And so 'tis shown that faith alone reveals the abalone. The more we take, the more we make in deep sea matrimony. Race suicide cannot be tied, the fertile abalone. I telegraph my better half by Morse or by Marconi. But if the need arise for speed, I send an abalone. Oh, some folks think the Lord is fat, some think that he is bony. But as for me, I think that he is like an abalone. Oh, Timothy's a friend to me. Kent Seavey is our crony. We bust our ass to track down the past of the historic abalone. Thank you.
Okay, well, Mrs. Shu, hello everybody. Mrs. I, we Achista. So I said, hello everybody and welcome to our village of Achista, now called Mrs. Shu, also, I'm going to mix Rumen and English. We Suquilta, and Suquilta was the name of the beach here at Monterey that our Rumen ancestors. We're all here at Suquilta. All right, so we are members of the Rumen Ohlone tribal community, local to here, but we have a lot of members who live outside the area. And actually, we're expecting another family, and I'm not sure what happened, so we're sharing a few dancers. We'll see, maybe they'll come while we're dancing. That's actually what happened last year. We'll see what happens. All right, let's see, what else? Shall we introduce? Might be interesting to know, I mean, I've told you we all are members of the local Rumen Ohlone tribal community, which means that we trace our ancestors back to the indigenous people, the Rumen people from here in Monterey. But today, a lot of our families live outside the area, so it might be kind of neat to know who lives close and who lives far.
Hi, I'm Mariana. I'm one of the executives. I live in San Luis, California. I go to school at UC Berkeley, studying political science and Native American studies.
My name's Eva, and I'm from Reno, Nevada.
Welcome. This is Ruben's first time to dancing with us. I'm Linda Yamani, Cotton Collect Linda Yamani. I live here in Seaside.
My name's Amaris, and
Bob Lucas from San Francisco. My name is Nick Diaz. I'm from the Salinas area. This is granddaughter, great-granddaughter, and great-granddaughter. We had one more that was supposed to be here. She didn't make it. She had a fever. She's only 2. Thank you very much.
My name is Rod Nesbitt. I live in Carmel Valley.
I live in Rancho Garage, which is way down south. I did live in Pacific Grove, second grade in Pacific Grove, and I love the Monterey.
Rodriguez.
All right, so for anybody who may have come a little bit later, I just want to remind you that we do not want you to take video or audio, please. We've had many generations and decades of not having our songs, and now we brought them back, and some of these are new songs, and we don't want those to be going on the internet and weird things being done with them. So I'm pretty sure, judging from all the nods, that you understand that. But still photos are absolutely fine. Okay? So we're going to be running each of the songs. First we're going to sing for you a welcome song, and then we are all going to sing a medley of 3 old-time songs, right? So the first we sing is using our old-time language, of course, but it's a contemporary song that I made probably 20-some years ago, but just want to be clear to you, not misrepresent. It's a new song with our ancient language. And then the second, which is a medley of 3, are 3 pieces of our old songs. So we have 3 dances for you, and the first is Earth Awakening, or Earth Awakening song, and it's in our language. It's contemporary, but with our ancient Rumen language, and it is saying, I'm closing my eyes so I can try to remember what the words are. It says, awakening, awakening, our Earth Mother is awakening. And there are a lot of repetitions in all of our songs, and so I've kept our contemporary songs to be within the same style of the old-time songs. And it talks about the important seed plants, the plants that made the most favorite seeds that our people ate. So it mentions the red maize and the chia sage and this particular tarweed, and says how the rains are coming and the seed times are coming. Okay, so that's just. So our next dance, our next song is about wasak. A little bit of explanation. How this song came to be is that a very good friend, and possibly a second friend, is here. She was going to maybe come anyway. So my friend in the first row, you don't mind pointing out, so she doesn't have to be here. She's sitting because she's our photographer, Cheryl. Anyway, she's a volunteer condor tracker for the Ventana Wildlife Society, and been learning from her and my friend and a biologist at Ventana Wildlife. I learned how important it is for the trackers to be able to actually counter the condors when they are out trying to intercept their signals. And then I learned from the biologist how important it is when they get a mortality signal. It's very important for them to consider and also to let the biologist know, because when a condor doesn't move for a certain time, then their, what do you call it, the thing that sends up the signal. Anyway, the radio signal starts to beep in a different fashion to indicate mortality, that they've died. But she said, don't forget, when they're nesting, they can sit without a single movement for 8 hours or something while they're incubating. So then I realized, well, they need to know where the nests are so that they can support those birds when they hatch and support that family. Anyway, so I said, you guys need a song, and it reminded me of 2 of our old songs, which have kind of the same messages in them. So I used portions of those old-time songs and created this one. And so the first part is saying, Condor, the first part of it is saying, come, come, Condor. You'll probably recognize it similar to our welcoming song. It's saying, come, come, because they want to encounter. And then after that, the second part of the song says, where is your nest? And we have an old-time song that says that as well, only it's asking Canada Goose, where is your nest? So that gives you a little bit of actually came from the root word for the red abalone, which is Ohlone. So when the Spanish were here, they kind of picked up on Ohlone and changed it slightly to Ohlone. And then when the Americans came and English was being spoken, they were calling abalone Ohlone. And then somehow, I don't know what happened next, but even some dictionaries give the etymology or the history of the word. They acknowledge that it came from this language. Somehow it went in from Ohlone to abalone. I should have explained to you a little bit about the content. So you already told you Ohlone is our word for abalone, specifically red abalone, but we kind of utilize our term now. But the song is saying different things like that, Ohlone, may you live forever, and it's so important in our culture, and really in the culture for pretty much all the tribes throughout California, as part of the Galia. Of course, it was eaten by our ancestors, but it more lives on as the beauty of the shells, and so the song is celebrating that and mentions earrings and kind of various things that are associated with it, saying we lift up our abalone, and at the end when we say Osha, Osha, it's saying thank you, which is why we usually try to do our Osha, Osha, thank yous out to the ocean, but we gave our final one to you. So anyway, thank you for joining us. And, that's what we have to share with you.
Thank you all for coming out today. One final thank you for Linda and the Rumen Ohlone tribal community. Just a reminder that we have another day of incredible programming all about abalone tomorrow. 10 a.m. we'll be starting in the JACL Hall. We have a series of talks starting with myself and a number of the organizations that were out front. The Giant Kelp Restoration Project, Team White Abalone right over there. It's going to be sharing about all the current research that they're doing, and then we'll be finishing up with tours of Monterey Abalone Farm down here on Wharf number 2. So hope you will be able to join us again tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming out.